Hello everyone and welcome to my studio. I'm Michelle Nettleton and today we're going to do a lovely painting of 3 blue eggs. I call it Nature's Blueprint. And today we're going to work with masking fluid, a stylus, and I'd like to introduce a color that I really like. It's called phthalo blue. So my students are all here and ready to get started, so let's join them. This one's called Nature's Blueprint. You like that name?
I do.
Yeah. Okay, so this is what we have to look out for. Right in here is very, very dark, and so when we get to that, make sure that you are not afraid to go dark. It's almost black, right? And then it just kind of fades out to something lighter towards the edges. All right. The eggs are, I'm going to introduce you to that color phthalo blue, which I'm going to. You have to keep this area light. There's certain areas that have to be kept light. Those are the highlights. And then we go into darker. We're going to do some splatter work. And then also, see these white little bits in here? Okay, that's masking fluid. I hope nobody's allergic to latex, because masking fluid is latex. Okay. And so that's about all we need to talk about right now. So, with your latex, some artists use brushes and they put soap on it and then they use the latex, but that to me is like, it's the best way to kill a brush. Okay, so I always use a stylus. Okay, and so when you use the stylus, you just open it up, you dip it in like this. Okay, dip it in and then make your little lines. All right, so what we're doing is we're making these lines for some branches and twigs and things, okay, that are in the nest, and we want to be able to paint freely, but we don't want to cover everything. All right, so we are going to make some squiggly lines, and we want the lines to reflect the shape of the bird's nest. All right, so birds sort of make their nests rounded, and so make your twigs and things sort of rounded. But we're gonna let it dry, and then what happens is after it's dry, we can paint all over on top of it. And then we just lift it off at the end. When you're done doing this, you take a paper towel and you wipe off the latex or the masking fluid. And here's a little tip. When it comes to this stuff, it dries out quickly. It goes all gummy. And so you have to always be careful that your cap is nice and clean. Okay, and then your rim is clean. And then you put your cap on, and then it won't dry out as much. And often, if you keep it upside down like that, stored upside down, it's best because the air doesn't get in. As soon as the air gets into the bottle, then that's when it starts to dry out. So now we're going to talk about the 5 lights of nature. So this is really important, guys. When you're painting or drawing, you have to keep in mind what the light does. So this specular light, this is what I always call a highlight. okay, specular highlight. That's the, that's where the sun hits the most direct. And then you have a diffused highlight, so that's right in this area as it starts to go into the darker color. Then there's the shaded side, so the side that's purpley here, that's the shaded side of the object, okay? The object right now is the egg. All right, and then there's a reflected light. So say there was I don't know, something bright over here, then you would have this light reflected. If it was something orange over here, you would have it would be more on the orangey side, okay? And then there's the cast shadow is right here. And I'm gonna do this because you can't really see it. Can you see it when I do this?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So this is the cast shadow. And the cast shadow is darkest near the object, and then it gets lighter as it moves away from the object. Okay? There. So there's the 5 lights of nature, and you're going to find that right here. Okay, so you have your highlight is here, then your diffused light, and then it gets really dark here where your shadow is, and then your reflected light right here. This is reflected. See these little light spots here? That's these eggs reflecting onto the back egg. And then the shadows are obviously all around underneath. And you'll see it's very, very intense. So you only use a very little bit, and it goes very dark very fast. So I hardly have any paint on my brush, and see how dark it is. And it also stains your clothes. So it's highly staining, okay? But it's a beautiful color. It's not a gorgeous color. And I'm pretty sure that you should be dry. You might have, like with your eggs, the masking fluid is probably dry. You might have some, like I have some lumps here that they're dry to the touch, but underneath it's a little bit wet, so that's no problem. That'll be fine. Okay, now we're going to start out with, with very, very, very lightly, okay? 2H pencil if you have one. I want you to very lightly draw a little oval where your highlight is going to be so that you don't forget, okay? And paint over top of it. So we're putting paint and water on everything, including that highlight.
Okay.
But if you take your paper towel and just put a little dab in the middle, that'll keep it kind of drier. It will help the paint not to get into that area. Wetting the whole thing so that we can have diffused lines. We don't want solid lines. All right, next we're going into our cobalt blue. So we take out some cobalt blue, and actually I should have sprayed my paints. Okay, spray my paints. Get them activated. Let's see. We got it wet. We go into the cobalt blue. We're working tea consistency, so that means there's quite a bit of water, but you don't want your brush to be soaking wet, so you dab it off on your paper towel a little bit. Okay, and then we're going to start at the outside and paint in, okay? Trying to make sure that the darker colors are on the outside and they get lighter as we go towards the inner part. And to do that, we add a little bit of paint to a little bit of water to our brush, and that dilutes the color and makes it lighter. Okay, now I've got a line happening here, so I've got my brush loaded in water, and I'm going around that area. Nice and soft. Phthalo blue. Go into your phthalo blue and add a bit of phthalo blue around the edge. Mine is like really intense, and so I have to add more water to it. And then I'm going to blend it out towards the middle. And then we can do the same thing with the other two eggs, but just be careful that you don't like if they touch one another, the paint will likely blend, and you don't really want that to happen. So just being careful. So now I'm just adding water to the entire egg. I want it wet, but not soaking wet. I want it damp. Okay. And then I start with the cobalt blue. And then while it's still wet, phthalo blue. Notice I'm using the side of my brush and not just the tip of my brush. I'm going to let it dry a little bit before I put some more blue in there to darken the edges of this one. Otherwise it'll get too wet, and then I'll have cauliflowers, which are really nasty things when you're trying to do something as subtle as these colors are. Like the transition from one shade to another is very subtle. You don't want it to start to have all these blooms and weird stuff. Now, on this one, you have to be careful for the reflection, okay? So there's a reflection that goes, I'm going to take a clean brush, so there's a reflection right here and a reflection right here. So don't lose those reflections. So now we're going to start working on the background. So the background is just, you wet it and then you start off with burnt sienna, lightly. Well, you can start dark near the eggs, and then move as you move away, it goes lighter. Okay, so and we're going to try and do this pretty quick. Don't fuss too much about it, all right? So we start with burnt sienna, and we put that in. And don't outline again. I don't know how many times I say that. Don't outline, don't outline.
Did you wet the paper before?
I did wet the
Thank you.
paper.
I missed that.
Okay, and then I just kind of let it, go out like that on its own. And so it looks kind of natural. Okay, so wetting. Burnt sienna. Be careful when you get to the sides of the eggs. That's where you do outline, but as you move away from the eggs, I don't want to see any outlining. And you can turn your paper around so that it's more convenient for you. And while it's still wet, and with a big brush, go into your burnt umber. And it's quite dark. So it's dark near the eggs, and then going lighter as we move away from the eggs. And you can make little marks sort of sticking out, branches and twigs and things that it's part of the nest. And then, again, while it's still wet, we're going to take the phthalo blue and the burnt umber, phthalo blue, and burnt umber, mix it together. That's going to give us a black. And now we're going to throw in some really dark stuff here, right next to the eggs. I'm doing some wet on dry here and making some little marks that are suggesting twigs. Okay, so I'm going along the edges to diffuse the edges so that they're not as solid. I want them to be a little bit softer, the transition to be a little bit softer. Because some of the colors from the nest are reflecting onto the eggs. So when I make this softer, it looks like it's part of the eggs are nestled into the nest instead of just plastered on top. It's nice and dry in the middle, so I'm going to erase those lines that I had for the to remind me to do the highlight. I'm going to get rid of those lines. Okay, so now I want it to be darker, the eggs to be darker, so I just added some ultramarine blue and then fading it into towards the center. If your background is wet, you don't want to do this because it'll just bleed right in. All right, now let's do the speckles. Let's do the speckles. So to do that, it's just that tapping that we do. So we load up our brush with phthalo blue or ultramarine blue or a combination of the two. Okay, and then we just tap, tap, tap. But you know what I did? I didn't wait until it was dry. My eggs are dry, and so they're bleeding all over the place. And I think that is going to look nice anyways. So later on, I'll tap some more when it's dry.
I remember we used to walk out after work and stand in the parking lot. We always would wonder, when is the bubble going to burst?
Yeah.
I knew it had to. And for me,
Okay, so
but hey,
now we're gonna do the same thing with the speckles, and but we're gonna go and speckle the background. So with your dark brown, so your burnt umber, and the same thing, just splatter.
that's this one.
Now I'm going to add some little twigs that are going up into the covering the eggs. So they're covering the eggs. So I'm going to make them that dark color. And I'm going to use a rigger. I've got the dark blue that the almost black that I made with raw umber and that blue, that really nice phthalo blue. So it's
Black and
raw umber and the phthalo blue, or you can use ultramarine blue. Then I'm going to make some little twigs that go up there. Now you could also use the pens or pens. And I'm making some of those twigs in burnt umber as well. My background is completely dry, so I am going to use either, you can use an eraser or your fingers and take that masking fluid off. I have this cool little tool that they use for taking masking fluid off.
Why not just leave it, Michelle? Because it looks kind of twiggy.
Because the masking fluid is not watercolor, for one thing. And then we're going to work on these twigs a little bit more, okay? So they don't look very natural right now. What we're going to do is we're going to take a small brush. So I've got a 0 here. And then I'm going to go into the burnt umber, and I'm going to make some little lines that cross the white lines. And sometimes kind of cover it up. And that's just making it look natural rather than these white worms in the nest. And then I'm using some of the black color, covering up little bits here and there. And then some phthalo blue on some of those lines. And now I think it looks kind of natural. We can grab a pen or a rigger and sign our names. I hope you guys all enjoyed this.
Oh, did we ever?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
what a-
Amazing. Thank you.